Hello people of YouTube, my name is Brad, this is my channel and I'm an Orange, and today we are going to talk about packing and moving your collection. If you've followed my channel for a while, you know over this past summer I moved. And it was a big ordeal, as moving tends to be. If you've ever moved, especially if you've had a decent amount of stuff, you know moving is an ordeal. There's a lot to do, a lot to pack. It's hard to explain. If you've been through it, there's really not much to explain. And one of the things I know a lot of people are curious about is, what did I do with this collection of models that you frequently see behind me in the openings and closings of my video? And what was the process? What did I do? How did I pack? So on and so forth. So as I was packing, as I was planning, I did try and take some video of what I was doing before, some video of after, with the ultimate intention of doing what I'm doing right now, and that's making a video about packing. Maybe a little bit of the lessons I learned, the processes that I use and how it worked, and things that you can do. It's a subject that has come up in the past with others who have had a larger collection like mine. There was an individual who moved within the past year or so that bought a lot of containers from, I believe, a hobby store, and packed a lot of their models into that, which is respectable and certainly a plan that way that you can go. But it's not how I went. So today we're going to talk about what I did as far as packing my models. I'm a cheapskate. I really am. I love to thrift. I love to reuse. I love to save a few bucks here and there within reason, and just not go out. I'm not the kind of person that would go out and buy a bunch of containers at the hobby store. No insult to somebody that can. That is a practical solution. But what I did, the first thing that I did is fortunately I knew the move was coming. It is something that had been talked about for a couple of years. We were eventually going to leave the house that we were in. So I knew it was coming. And the moment we made the decision, alright, it's going to be this summer, we made that decision in winter time, so we had months to start getting ready. Fortunately for me, part of the planning process, let me back up a little bit. So there was in my head, planning process of, I need to start looking for boxes, containers. What am I going to pack this in? The thought of going out and buying a bunch of plastic containers occurred to me. That's a lot of money. Something else that occurred to me, I recently acquired a 3D printer, and it occurred to me to maybe 3D print some custom containers to put all of my models in. And that's not that that's a bad idea. I could make little containers, boxes, whatever size I want for every different model. That's going to take a considerable amount of time, however, to design and print, and possibly make some mistakes and have to redesign and reprint. That's a process, and I had over 200 models when I moved. I'm getting close to 250 at this point. I want to say I was around the 230s when I moved. That's a lot of things. 230 different boxes to print for different models, ranging in sizes. It's an avenue that I considered. I could probably streamline that process, but it's not ultimately what I did. It would have been a lot of time involved in doing that, but it's not what I want to do. And there would have been an advantage of having custom made boxes that I could then say, hey, here's a design for you. If you have a 3D printer and you have this model, I have a design for this model and that model and that model. Still though, with everything there is to do with packing, that's not the avenue I wanted to go. So what I did, the other thing about having a 3D printer, is I bought a lot of filament. If you're not familiar with 3D printers, you have to buy spools or rolls of plastic to be able to print with it. For example, I have a spool of red filament right here that works with my 3D printer. It's solid red, so if I'm printing a red part, I'm good to go, but I print in a lot of different colors. So I have red, and I have blue, and I have purple, and yellow, white, orange, green, silver, gray. I got quite a bit of different filament, and I did not throw away the boxes. Understandably enough, they came in an appropriately sized box. Here we go. I take the filament out, and I've got a nice empty box to use. So I had probably, by the time it came time to pack the models, somewhere around 10 to 15 boxes, possibly a couple more, because I had ordered several different colors. I printed and sold a lot of things on Etsy, printed a number of things for myself, had to buy more, saved all the boxes. So that's the first thing I did. I decided to start saving smaller boxes. I had Kickstart with the filament boxes, but anything else that seems appropriate. Here's a box right here. This one is literally for the R2, Mega R2 that I have. Whatever box that I thought I might could utilize, I grabbed it and saved it. I had some work done on my car. I had one of my car parts came in this box right here. This is the Megatron box. I've used this multiple times. It's got paper already in it. So some of the stuff I had already had experience in packing and moving across town to put on display for different reasons. But I started saving boxes. I also started saving packing material. The house family that I was with at the time did a lot of Amazon ordering, so I would save a lot of smaller Amazon boxes. I would save packing paper for anything that was ordered, put it to the side. And when the day came when I finally went down in the basement, and because my studio, my builder's nest, as I've started calling it, has been in the basement for probably 6-7 years now, and it was at the house that I moved out of. So one time came when a considerable amount of the basement had already been packed and moved out into storage. I took that extra space, I set up a couple of tables, and I got to work. And there is a variety of different methods I use to pack these models. I got all the boxes in together in that area. I got newspaper and packing paper together in that area. I got scissors and a knife and a hot glue gun, because one of the things that occurred to me with boxes like these filament boxes, and I also had similar size boxes, the filament boxes are pretty sturdy, more so than just a plain cardboard box. This is kind of floppy and could get squished, but these are much sturdier sides, and you could stack things on top of them. Not that I plan on putting a lot of weight on it, but I like that they were sturdier. I found some similar boxes to this. One of the boxes that I had, I think, had something like a keyboard or a big piece of electronics in it. It was a very sturdy box. I ended up packing a lot of Star Wars models in that. It was just a variety of different boxes that I used. I'd also acquired a few plastic containers over time. Honestly, I got them from my brother, who was not using them. And I have used these to transport some models before, so I utilized them for some of the models. With everything being a variety of sizes, I had to use more than one method or more than one box. A lot of the similar size stuff like cars, ships, train pieces, tanks, I was able to put in the filament boxes. All the other stuff went in other boxes. Things that had wings like planes, butterflies, dragons, had to be packed in different, somewhat creative ways. But I put together a short clip, 15 minutes, if you can call that short. Definitely took me longer than that to put the boxes and pack everything together. But I put a clip together of some of the things that I did when it come time to pack these models. So let's jump into that. A little bit of narration and see somewhat quickly how I packed these models. Basically, I started with one of the filament boxes and laid a few models out in what seemed to be a decent arrangement, and started clipping out cardboard pieces. I had a bunch of scrap cardboard laying around from boxes that fell apart, from packages that had cardboard in them, whatever, and just started cutting pieces to kind of fit in between all of the different models that I had laying in there, basically trying to keep things from moving around too much. I cut a bunch of stuff out and cut things to shape, and then once I got at least a decent start on how I wanted things, I started grabbing the hot glue and going back and gluing things in. And here I'm trying to pin the X-wing down between the tips of its wings where the guns are in the cockpit, so it can't slide around and damage the very thin guns on it. And here you can see I'm starting to hot glue some of the pieces in. Put a little hot glue on the edges of other pieces so they'll stick together. Later on, I started having enough foresight to not have to stick the hot glue in the box very much. Glue the edges before I put the pieces in. One thing in this first box, first one or two boxes, I failed to account for was the fact that the lid had cardboard pieces that slid down the side. And I didn't leave a gap for those cardboard pieces to fit down in there. Something was coming loose, so I added a little more glue. First box was very experimental and mistakes were made, but I think I caught on fairly quickly. And I'm just adding in a piece here to keep that part from moving around, or that model from moving around too much. I think that's the AT walker on its back, so that the weight is not resting on the legs. And then another little piece to keep this model here in the middle from moving. I honestly can't tell what that is right now. Having to hold things for a few seconds while it cools and dries. It's just a lot of plugging in different pieces until I was satisfied with how things stayed in there. And added it in, a little model in the corner. Here I'm adding a piece on top to keep things from lifting up too much and popping out of their slot. Just trying to keep things still. I didn't do this in every box, but just a few of them, the added pieces on top. And here's where I'm discovering that I forgot to account for the room of the, or account for the sides coming in. So I basically didn't want to rip everything out and cut off parts of the sides until I got enough cut off for it to fit and close. For a first try, this isn't too bad. Trial and error. Honestly, there's a lot of trial and error goes into building these things. Why not have a little trial and error going into packaging them safely? There you go. First one down. Legends models. I think I had some of these models already in this box because this happened shortly after the Comic-Con here in Erie, and I had taken some models with me, and when I brought them back to the house, I just left the Legends models that I had packed in the box. And with this, I didn't want to cut out a bunch of different cardboard pieces. These models are fairly sturdy, so I just kind of layered them with some tissue paper that I saved from deliveries, from packages that were delivered to my house, and just stuffed them all in the box, and there you go, hoping for the best. And I wrote names on some of the boxes, but not all of them. Here I go again with the ships, same story, cutting pieces to fit, not just lengthwise, but sometimes height-wise. I had to trim pieces so they weren't too tall, and the box would actually still close. And in the end, I kept all these boxes together. All the boxes that all the models kept were together. And when it came time to take them to storage, because fortunately I was moving locally, and I needed to just move everything into storage out of the house as much as possible, so that when the day come to be out of one house and into the other, I didn't have to try and move everything in one day. So a lot of the stuff went to storage. I had a spot set aside for it. Everything moved together. None of it went in a truck. None of it went on a trailer. It all went in my car. So I was careful with it in that respect. And I tried to keep things together. Here you see there's a lot of ships in this box, but there were times where I had extra space, and I need to put something in there. So the tanks got kind of mixed in with the ships. I wanted to keep things categorized together, but it just wasn't practical. I was basically trying to fit as much reasonably into a spot that I could. Some of the tanks I think got put on their side, like those two were put on their side, but they're fairly sturdy, and so I wasn't too worried about those getting damaged like that. Had to kind of shift things around for the box to close. And there you go. The planes were more challenging though. The planes really didn't take the time to try and cut out cardboard pieces for the planes, because they're I don't want to say oddly shaped, because they're all very similar format, but they're not compact. They have the wings sticking out, they have propellers. So I did something similar to what I did with the Legends models, where I just tried to lay a few out logically. Piece of tissue paper, lay a few more out, some more tissue paper, try and keep them from moving around too much. More planes, same thing. I was just trying to pack them together so they didn't bump into each other too much. They fit together a little bit like puzzle pieces. And there's some of these planes I just couldn't get, but so many into a box. They were a challenge to pack, and they're honestly a bit of a challenge to display without taking up a ton of room. And it took me a while of just moving around and experimenting with things until I got it to a point that I was satisfied. Like the helicopters, I think I ended up putting upside down. Some of them I did. Yeah, I put that one upside down so that it was kind of resting on the propellers, on the blades, or whatever you want to call them. A few pieces of paper in between so they won't scratch each other. I don't know how many hours I spent packing everything. It was quite a bit of time. I took a couple of breaks in between, but I had so many models and so much to pack, I didn't want to spend all day just packing models. These helicopters are upside down. Just not getting so much into a box because I don't want to cram things to the point where they're pushing and bending on each other. Then we have a box like this for Megatron. It's so big, it gets its own box. I've moved it a couple of times in this box already. It's a really nice piece to show off if I'm putting up a display somewhere, which I have shown it off a couple of times now. Optimus Prime and Bumblebee got put in their own box together. Bumblebee in pieces, wrapped up like a coffee mug or something in a shopping bag. These boxes I got from the library, and they ordered a bunch of fans, I think with charcoal filters for a soldering class they were having, and they asked me if I wanted them, and I was looking for boxes to pack my models. They knew that, and they came in handy for some of them. These tanks and trains are all fairly squarish and a good models to pack in this fashion. Tractor as well, the spitter. Starting to jump ahead here. You see I've already formed a lot of the back of this box. It's just building on top of what I've already got until I've fastened everything in. And sometimes taking the models out while I glue pieces in, because I'm trying not to get glue on the model itself. There was a couple of times I accidentally did. Trying to secure pieces against other pieces so they'll be more structurally sound. That piece isn't going all the way across because of the barrel of the tank. I don't want it to bump into it, but it's enough to hold it from moving around too much. And with these, the side pieces didn't go all the way to the side so that the edges of the lid will be able to fit in there. I don't know if you noticed that last box had some Chinese writing on it. I believe that was a box that I got one of the MU Transformer models in from AliExpress, and I just reused it. Here we have the delicate Halo model being cradled. Second thought, I don't want that where there's stuff going to be on top of it. So these are just some of the larger, oddly shaped things that just got kind of stacked on tissue paper in different boxes. That piece of cardboard was in the way, so we'll just chop it off. It's all very improvised. This is the Star Wars box. It took me a while to construct. I think I took pictures of when I was unpacking and shared it on social media. I was rather proud of this box and how it turned out. Proud of how I was able to get some of the tall, oddly shaped things like the shuttles to fit in there and not take up a ton of room. You can see at the bottom of the screen, the TIE Fighter is laid upside down on its back. You see the shuttles are laid kind of on their back, not upside down, but laid down on their back. I believe the Imperial Star Destroyer, the Metal Earth version, is kind of laid sort of upside down. It's just whatever seemed logical for the move, so they wouldn't be wobbling on their stand or doing damage. That piece was kind of bent at an angle and put in to capture the Y-wing into its corner spot so it wouldn't move around. I cut one piece to kind of go between the shuttles to keep them separated and from bumping into each other. Jumped ahead with some angled pieces there to curve around and keep those models in place and in check. Just kept cutting and adding and shaping and twisting and gluing, and in the end, I think it worked out really well for this particular box. Some reason, and I can't even remember why I pulled that out. I think I dropped some glue on it by mistake and was trying to clean it off. Fortunately, the hot glue didn't stick too well. There's a Mega R2. It's had its own box for a while now because I have taken it out on display. I shifted stuff out of one box to another because the one filament box had a big hole in the back. And I just found the box that didn't and moved everything to that. Cut and shaped all the side pieces and glued them in, but it made me aware that some of those filament boxes I have a big hole in the back, and I needed to address that as well. And in the future, before I would start packing one of those boxes, I would plug the hole. Here, a couple of models were so short that I put a level on top of them to pack even more models, like the Mustang and the cars are just not very tall at all, so I could double stack those and add more room. Same with this. I had a little room on top. I put a board on top of that, and there was a place for the guitars. There's another box that I stacked some of the larger, oddly shaped models. Image Transformers. We've got Iron Man and War Machine. I believe a Transformer was on the bottom, one of the trucks. Here's a lot of odd end stuff. Star Wars stuff. We've got the Falcon, the whole Solo Falcon specifically. I had some plastic containers that I do use to take stuff for display. So that was good for a couple of the ships. All of the planes for the aircraft carrier in their separate box. Piece of cardboard in between to keep the ships from bouncing off each other. And carefully placed paper on top. And here we've got a couple of more models, a dragon, a butterfly, and I think that's the carriage, Sleeping Beauty, not Sleeping Beauty, one of the carriages. More tissue paper, had lots of that laying around. We've got some building models because they're just so tall. They're not going to fit in the other style boxes, so I laid a lot of those down. Ferris wheels, had a piece of paper on top and stack even more things. Got the Mars rover. Got just random stuff. Drum set, dinosaurs, penny farthing. More paper to try and keep things from moving around in a Skechers box. Bought some shoes, saved the box. I believe this is what I was talking about with I needed to plug the hole in the box before I started packing stuff in it. And so cut a piece of size, that was done off screen, a little glue around the hole, stick a piece there, there you go. The hole's plugged up, models aren't going to fall out. Now I can use this box. And that's a rundown of what I did, but that is not every box pack. That 15 minutes of video didn't cover every single box that I packed, because why would I do that to you? But there were, you know, I may have counted at one point, but I can't remember the number. And I've unpacked everything at this point and gotten rid of half of the boxes for space. But the filament boxes alone, I think I already said there had to have been at least 10, 15, possibly a little more filament boxes. And a lot of those boxes were done with the glued sides in, where I custom cut cardboard pieces and made little walls to kind of hold things together. But not all of the filament boxes ended up that way. There were several though. I only showed a few in that video. There were a number of them, quite a few more than I didn't show, that I cut out because I didn't even record because it became so many different boxes. There were a number of boxes though, like this, where I just, like the Legends models, I just kind of made a layer of Legends models. I put some packing paper on top, and I carefully laid more Legends models on top of that. The Legends models I was not too worried about because they're pretty sturdy once they're built. Some of them, like Wonder Woman, have the sword sticking out that's a little bit delicate, but I tried to place those in such a way that they weren't going to get, have weight on them and get damaged. There was a certain risk involved, but I took that risk and put everything in together. Things like the airplanes, the butterflies, stuff like that just had to be carefully stacked with packing paper in between, because it just wasn't practical to try and build walls around those things. It was very practical for the cars and the trains and a lot of the Star Wars ships, but it wasn't practical for the winged planes and the dragons and things that were just too tall to even fit in a box like this. As you saw, there were some larger things like the MU Megatron had its own box, which I showed at the very beginning of this video. I've actually used it several times. The Mega R2-D2 has its own box that I've used several times. Optimus Prime and Bumblebee, the MU ones, ended up getting their own box, which was similar in shape to this one, but a little bit shorter, a little bit smaller. There were Hakko boxes. Much as I go to the library, they had recently ordered a bunch of exhaust fans for soldering, because they were doing soldering classes, and they showed me the boxes and they were like, hey, we know you're packing, would you like these? Absolutely, I would like these. And I used one of those boxes to pack the Optimus Prime, which isn't quite as tall as Megatron, and Bumblebee, which breaks into two pieces. And the other boxes, I just kind of layered stuff in that were just oddly shaped and tried to layer it in a logical fashion to not damage each other. Like the big dragon went in with one with other stuff on below or on top of it. Tried not to put a lot of weight so they wouldn't crush each other. Tried to spread things out. I think I had 6 Hakko boxes. I had several boxes similar in size and shape to the filament boxes, but just random different things. I want to say I had 4 or 5 of the plastic, if I can pick it up without throwing it all over the place, Sterilite boxes like this. So I have 3 right here, and there's at least one more over on the shelf, and I think there's one behind me in another shelf. I want to say I utilized all of those. I remember specifically the battleships going and the aircraft carrier going in that box because they were just so long. What else am I going to put them in? But for the most part, things were just kind of either put in a box like this with cut and glued sides to hold it in place, or in some instances I actually stacked those inside the box, and other things were just carefully placed with paper in between, stacked carefully inside of boxes. And none of the boxes were that big. At least none of the boxes for the smaller models are very big, because I didn't want to put too much into one and crush it. I do also want to point out that for my situation, I wasn't moving very far. A lot of what we were doing was moving stuff into storage to start emptying the house out before the move date, so that we wouldn't have this 1 or 2 day bonanza where we're trying to move everything from one house to another. It's a rental. It was a rental property. Where I'm at now is also rental, and You know, the one place you got to be out by the end of the rent period, or you're signing a new lease and stuck in a new contract or a new lease or whatever. The new place, you know, we didn't know if we were going to end up having to move out of one place the end of this month and into the next place the next month, or if there was going to be an overlap. So we just, to avoid a stressful situation, we started packing and putting stuff into storage. That's where these models went. These models went maybe halfway to 2/3 of the way through the moving process, packing and storing process. I packed up all the models. I didn't have to go very far for storage, a little bit farther probably than, it wasn't the closest storage unit. So there was a little bit of a drive, maybe 10 minutes. And some of that's because of traffic and stoplights. So they didn't have to go far. They weren't bouncing around. The models boxes weren't bouncing around for a very long time. So I know that's one of the things you're going to end up dealing with if you're going for a long distance drive. If you're moving from state to state or county to county, you might end up with these bouncing in the back of a truck or a trailer. I ended up moving them in my car. The only thing I moved in the car was all of the models. They all got put into one corner of storage and left alone until I dealt with them. Most of them got marked, but it was easy to tell that that's a corner that you let Brad deal with, because those are his models. And I point that out because coming up next is unpacking the models and the state that they were in during or after all of this unpacking. Where are things going to survive? Where they're going to get damaged? How is it going to all turn out? Well, that's another video clip that I've put together, and let's go and roll that. I got my 3D printer running in the background, but it's time for the moment of truth. And the first thing I opened, I really just randomly grabbed a box off of the stack. And here we have the Star Wars models, which seems to have survived the move rather well. The little corrugated areas that I created seem to have done a lot of good. I tell you, this would be a decent time to grab my little dollar store makeup brush and give these a bit of a dust. We have Darth Vader's scratched up helmet. Could probably stand to take a pin to that. Black marker. Things seem to have survived. BB-8 even came out with straight antennas. Oh, and my clumsy self seems to have made the trip. I have weird things like this to try and keep the models and the pieces together, and a little bit of accidental glue spilling over from the hot glue gun. Hopefully that won't be a big problem as time goes on. And I think over here is the stand. There we go. It's very nicely held into place. I've grabbed another box. I'm not even sure what's in it. It's my first time opening it. And the different boxes were packed in different ways. The guitar. With two different guitars. And what do we have underneath? We have the stands. It had magnets on them. They try and hold things together. Glued themselves to one of the cars. We have the bad signal. We have our Ford. Seems like everything has arrived safely. A little bit of glue stringing to clean off. We have our big Skechers shoebox here. I was running out of filament boxes. This stuff was oddly shaped and not quite conducive to the flat boxes with the little spaced areas. So let's see how this worked out. That seems to have survived okay. Everything's kind of bunched together in here, unfortunately. Drum set seems to be okay. Ooh, these have hooked together, but seems to be okay. The hearse has survived. Space Needle. Dinosaur. Got the T-Rex. Looks like we may have had some separation at the back. Yeah, looks like you may have taken a little bit of damage there. So we may have to go to the magnifying glass and sort some of that out. Not bad though. A little bit of damage on the tail. We have our bicycle, and I think the stand for this got unintentionally separated when I was packing it. So I'm not sure where the stand is, but I think it's in a completely different box. Underneath, more big giant wheel things. Some of our Iconics models. And Ferris wheel. Looks like everything is pretty well intact and good to go. So I'm not gonna take every one of these out. I'm gonna start putting them on the shelves and move to the next box. We have a plastic container which I think has ship in it. Oh, we have this big dragon from Green God's dragon, excuse me. Another very odd shaped one. A little bit of curling of pieces. Honestly, to be expected, but overall, Green God's dragon seems to be okay. We have carriage, Disney carriage, rather delicate model, seems to have survived. We have a butterfly stuck in here, which this is the first butterfly I ever did, and I've recently done another butterfly and realized that I made a mistake in doing the legs. I didn't twist them, I tried to fold them. So I'm going to have to correct that now that I know better. Buried up here, we have, trying to carefully remove, something seems to be stuck. Trying to stick on that front piece there. Piece of cardboard to keep them from bumping each other. And yeah, it's a bit wobbly, but that was catching the paper. But it seems to have survived the trip fairly well. Very nice. And our aircraft carrier. Should probably use a wee bit of dusting. Also seems to have survived, maybe a couple of slightly bent pieces. I think there are the planes in their container. I said when I built this that I was going to put magnets under the deck, and I didn't, and I regret that. How did that fare? Oh, that's going to need some touching up. Put that to the side. That got a little rattled around. We have, looks like that got a little bent out of shape as well. It's a little crooked. Not too bad. I'm putting things away, I'm noticing the Eiffel Tower incurred some damage. This is definitely a delicate model. It might take some doing to get that back into shape. It's certainly possible. Yeah, I mean, it's this many models is kind of hard to avoid some sort of damage. That's a good start. Work on that a little bit more and put it on the shelf. Okay, so here, I can get to it. We have the great big giant box of Star Wars models. It's like a keyboard box or something that I converted over. I'm not going to take every one of these out on camera, but just an initial look, everything looks to be pretty good. A couple more boxes here that things seem to have done well. More Star Wars tanks and trains and such vehicles. All pretty much surviving the experience fairly well. And there you go. There was, as I was pointing out before that clip of unpacking, I didn't have to travel very far, and I know that has to be a factor. So if there have been moves where I've had to travel across 3 different states to get from one place to another, had it been a move of that nature, probably more damage would have occurred just from them bouncing around in whatever vehicle or truck or location they were at. I would have had to have taken more precautions to try and allow them to survive. It really would have depended on the distance. When I moved to the state I'm in now, it was a 3 or 4 state move, and I did have some delicate things like a glass top Star Trek 25th anniversary chess set that a friend came from the state that I'm in now to the state that I was in to help me pack, and I said, you know what, can you take these back in your vehicle rather than in a moving truck? And if that situation would have presented itself, I probably would have asked if there was a chance to travel, either me or somebody else in just a car from a long distance, one location to another, from where I'm at to where I'm moving. I would have probably sent models that way rather than put them in the back of a moving truck where things get jostled around and damaged. But I kind of stress on that. Overall, the packing worked great. Things came out really good. There was a fair amount of minor damage as far as like antennas getting bent, like on the ships, and tips of wings, and just minor stuff that it takes a second or two to straighten back out. Tips of a couple of the tall buildings, just little antenna pieces that were just no big deal to straighten back out. That was a majority of the damage, if the parts were even damaged. A lot of the boxes, like the filament box and the keyboard box, where I had taken the time to cut out and glue cardboard pieces in there, most of that stuff came out just fine. No problems at all. As you've seen in that clip, the things that did take damage, the merry-go-round had a multitude of bent pieces around the edge. They're very sensitive to that. I had a lot of trouble with just building it. Did not take very long to straighten that back out. The projector got slightly kinked to one side. It's just kind of stretched and stressed that back into shape. Not a big deal. The big thing that took the most damage was the Eiffel Tower. And it somehow got partially crushed. But again, it was just a matter of time spent straightening those pieces back out, and for the most part, the Eiffel Tower is now fine. For all the models that I moved, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't much damage, and it wasn't a big deal correcting what little damage there was to be corrected. So I'm very pleased overall with how that turned out. Also, one of the things that occurred with the boxes that had the glued in sections, there was some issue with the glue dripping or leaking over to a model, and some glue got stuck to models here and there. There was a lot of stringiness because hot glue just does that. There are a lot of areas that I would not use hot glue in because it's so stringy, and that string seems like it goes on forever. So there was a fair amount of cleaning the string out of some of the models that were packed in the boxes with the glued partitions. There were a couple of instances where melted globules fell off and landed on the model. Whenever that happened, it picked off really easy because the models are just shiny silver or painted silver, and there's not a lot of cavity for the model, the glue to leak into and get stuck. They just popped right off, so there was no damage done from the glue. All in all, I feel good about how the move went. There really isn't much that I would do differently as far as the process went. Everything went fairly well. I would certainly reuse a lot of those filament boxes, and while after I unpacked a lot of the models you see behind me, if you look, actually it's not completely organized yet. There's some things I want to do and some risers that I want to 3D print to kind of organize things better, but that's just a slow working process. But after I got everything unpacked, some of the boxes I just got rid of, because what am I going to do with a bunch of empty boxes? I didn't count. I think I did count how many boxes there were at one point. I have no idea what that number is. I've looked to try and see if I put it on social media or Patreon somewhere and I can't find it. I probably have a picture of it somewhere buried in my phone, but there's just only so much time I'm willing to spend digging through the pictures on my phone looking for a picture of the boxes, because at one point I had them stacked over to the side here of my little builder nest, and I kept putting off putting them up because I wanted to rearrange the shelves. If you look behind me, again, if you've been watching my channel long enough, you'll notice that this background is a little different than it was before. These are DVD shelves that I use behind me. And I used to have the thin, tall DVD shelves, and I think it was one on each side and one black one, and one of these wider black ones in the middle. And all of that stuff came secondhand, because again, I'm thrifty and I'm a cheapskate. The two of these black towers behind me now, the wide ones, I had one of them, and before I had its twin off to the side out of camera view that I often used to put stuff on temporarily for me to reach for my camera. The arrangement I have now is different. Both of those are being used behind me currently, and I found a very similar one on Amazon and bought it. This one brand new one back there, I think it's the one in the middle. It's slightly shorter but the same style, and that's what I'm going with now. It gives me a lot more room. I do want to add some risers in the back half of a lot of these shelves to make it look more full so I can see the models better. But the hardest part of unpacking was just finding where to put all of them, and I'm still really not done with that yet. But I got rid of a lot of the boxes. I did save some though, especially the ones that I custom glued sides in. I've saved those because honestly I could go back to these video clips, so I know where they're going to be saved, and look at the clips and figure out which models I had in which box and just reuse them if the day ever comes that I have to move again. Heaven help me if it does, but if the day ever comes that I have to move again, I've already got some of the boxes constructed. Would it be nice to design some custom boxes and maybe 3D print a few things? Sure. Am I ever going to find the time to do that? Probably not. I have a list of things I'd like to do. There are probably some good solutions out there as far as finding storage containers that you can buy. Not the route that I went, so I really can't advise on that, but planning ahead and saving some boxes and maybe custom gluing some stuff together was a reasonable route, and it worked fairly well, worked very well for me. And something to consider if you have a move on your own. A nice glue gun, a bunch of scrap cardboard, and some small cardboard boxes, and you could probably pack a decent amount of your collection. I hope you found this video helpful, if nothing else, entertaining. It was a challenging move, and it is now behind me, and it is time to move forward. Again, I've saved a few of the boxes here and there. I didn't save all of them, so I can't go back and count how many boxes there were. It was quite a lot of boxes, but I wanted it to be a lot of different boxes so that the models were more secure. I'd rather have a lot of little small boxes like this that are very sturdy and stackable than a smaller amount of really large boxes where things are just crammed on top of each other and could possibly do more damage. At least with the smaller boxes, the damage is kind of limited to not as susceptible to stacking damage as if you just kind of cram it all in one big box. As always, if there's any questions that you have, especially things that I haven't answered, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. if I get enough questions, if there's something big that I've missed, I can always make a supplement video to this as far as packing models. It's taken me forever to put this together just because it's taken me forever to get back to a point where I can put it together, because moving is just such a big ordeal. And you know, I'm looking around trying to think, is there anything that I missed? And I see this little container here that I put a bunch of the planes in. But honestly, I don't think that's all of them. I think that I've got a number of planes MIA, and I'm honestly not sure where they went. If they're in an odd Ziploc bag somewhere or another container and I forgot about them, or if I accidentally threw them away because they're not on the shelf. I may have made a small error. There's every possibility they are somewhere misplaced and I forgot where, in some sort of tin or container, because I do that sort of thing. But overall, things turned out pretty good. I might be missing a few planes for the aircraft carrier. Could always 3D print them. If I ever get one of those Prusa minis, I can make little miniature planes. Wouldn't that be neat? Anyhow, I'll leave it at that. Like I said, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you to my Patreon supporters for your support in keeping this channel going. As always, keep on keeping on.